North Dakota. This is a Scribe's Journey with your host, Richard Polinelli.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We made it to week 2 of A Scribe's Journey. They didn't kick us off YouTube. We'll see if we can keep that streak going. Now, last week's show is pretty much the standard format that we're going to have. I'm going to come on and talk for a couple of minutes about whatever issue I want to talk about for whatever amount of time, and then we're going to bring our guest on. We'll have an author come on, spend about half hour to 40 minutes with them, and then we'll wrap up the show. And that's pretty much your standard format to expect going forward. Today's show we're going to do a little bit differently, only because the author that we're going to feature is no longer with us. He passed away back in September of 2017. Had he still been alive today, he most definitely would have been our featured guest today, and he would have been on, and it would have been an incredible show because he's quite the storyteller and quite the character. That can't happen, obviously, but we're fortunate in that we have a video clip that was shot of him at, I believe, Mid-America Con. I'll have to double check that. It's about 5 or 6 minutes long, but he talks about his trilogy that was nominated for a Dragon Award back in 2016. So we'll get to hear him in his own words talking about the book and how he came about writing it. When we're done, we'll come back and we're going to talk about the 4th book he wrote. It was the one he was working on when he passed away. He obviously didn't finish it, but other people have stepped in and finished it for him. We kind of alluded to it a little bit last week, I believe. His editor is going to be on next week's show, so you're going to hear a little bit more about it, but I want to kind of wrap up a little bit about that 4th book, when it's going to be out, and kind of the challenges that everybody who went to work on it faced getting it finished. We'll get to that a little bit later. Now, last week I did mention there was 3 different types of published authors. There was the traditionally published, there was the independently published, and then there's the hybrids. And I have been one of those 3 at some point in my writing career these last 5 years. So what I want to do before we get to our guest is kind of talk about the differences between the 3 and kind of reinforce the fact that there's really no one way that is the right way to do this, and that what would work for one person isn't going to work for the next. So there's really, there's going to be some authors that the traditional route is going to be better. There's some authors the independent route is going to be better, and there's going to be those crazy people like me who the middle ground is going to be better, the hybrid route. We'll talk about the pros, we'll talk about the cons. We'll do that. It won't take too much longer to do that, and then we'll get to our guest. So let's just kind of go into it. Traditional publishing, obviously. We'll kind of go with my example of it. Back in 2014, I had just written a book called Reservations, and I wanted to do the traditional route. I wanted to find an agent. I wanted that agent to find me a publisher. I wanted the publisher to publish my book, and I could walk down to a Barnes & Noble anywhere in the country, walk into whatever section the book is going to be put in, and find it on the shelf. That was what I wanted to do. So I got the book finished. I sent out the queries to the agents. I believe I hit 186 queries that were out there. I got a couple of, yes, send us the rest of the manuscripts. I got a couple of, we like what we saw. We'd like you to maybe work on the book a little bit more and send it back. Got an agent who read the book and wanted to represent me, so off we went. I signed with that agency. Now, I do want to point out, I did have the book edited before I started sending out to agents. That's something I do recommend all of you do before you, no matter which way you're going to go. Make sure you've got that book run through an editor, and our guest next week is an editor. We'll talk about that as well. But definitely do that. Spend that money, because if you don't, odds are you're probably not going to get an agent. And even if you go the independent route, if you don't get it edited, it's going to show and you're not going to sell. And that's going to be the end of that. So I did that, had an agent. She started the process of shopping it around to publishers all over the place. We had a couple of publishers express interest, and we finally had one who decided they wanted to do it. So the book was published traditionally. It did very well. We'll talk a little bit later about some of the things that happened afterwards that kind of drove me away from traditional publishing. But for the most part, I succeeded in what I wanted to do. I had my agent, I had a book published. They wanted the second book of the series, so it looked like everything was flying along just fine. Some things happened. Some of them nobody's fault. Sometimes, especially when you're dealing with a small publisher, there's not that many people involved. Certain situations happened, and all of a sudden the person running the show became very ill and was not able to continue on with the company and released everybody's rights back to them. One thing I will point out is that traditionally published book I received one royalty check for. Just one, and it came out at the end of the year, so it was only 2 months worth of royalties. It wasn't much. The book took off in the first quarter of the next year, and it was selling very well. So there should have been a very nice royalty check. With the issues that happened, that royalty check has never shown up, and we're 3-4 years down the road. A lot of people said you should sue. I'm not going to. There's some reasons why. Namely, because I'm not going to go after somebody who pretty much, because of health issues, has been financially ruined. So even if I were to sue, and even if some of the other authors were, we would win. We'd have a very nice judgment. We'd also have a very nice attorney bill, and we would get no money. So it's, you wave it off at that point and move on. Give me a second here. So with that happening, and then another situation with the agent that I signed up with that I won't go into because I don't want to get sued. I reached a point a couple of years ago where I had enough of the traditional route. It wasn't for me. And one reason I will point out is I got to looking. With a traditionally published book, you get 15% of the book cover. So let's say you've got an ebook and you've got a publisher who charges, let's go $6.99. I think that's too high for an ebook, but that's another show. Out of that $6.99, you get 15%. So you're looking at maybe $1. Out of that $1, you have to pay your agent. So now, usually it's 15% on top of that. So now you're down to 85 cents a book, which is not bad until you look at the independent route. That $6.99 book, you probably would sell for $4.99. But even if you went for $6.99, you get 70% of that ebook through Amazon or through some of the other publishing outlets that are out there. So now you're talking $4.85? That's an extra $4 a book. Now the thing you will say to me is, but wait a minute. With a traditional publisher, I get all this advertising and marketing, and they promote the book, and there's more sales. Yes, if your name is J.K. Rowling or say a James Patterson, yeah, you're going to get the full power of that company's marketing arm. If you're not, pretty much you're going to have to be out there doing all the marketing and all the the promoting that you are expecting them to do. Now they're going to do a little bit. They'll put it up on their website. They'll have maybe a newsletter goes out on an email. They'll do some. But the lion's share of the work is going to be you. You're going to have to go out there. When I was traditionally published, I thought, okay, I can sit back, let them do the marketing. And the book did not sell very well. I mean, it did okay. It was the number 3 book for the company for the entire year. And I hadn't done anything marketing myself. That January, I decided I'd had enough of this with sales numbers, and I went out and actively promoted it. I got on social media. I started lining up appearances on radio shows and magazine articles, blogs, whatever I could find. I went out and did, and the numbers spiked up. Now, of course, had the situation that happened, I would have gotten a much nicer royalty check, or I'd have gotten a royalty check anyway. But the point was, I could see the numbers spike anytime I actively went out and did the work. You'll see that too. But why are you paying a traditional publisher basically $4 a book to do all that for you when you're doing it anyway? I'll give you an example of a writer for a company. I'm not going to name the writer's name. I'm not going to name the publisher because I'm not into shaming right now. I'm just, as an example, this person showed up at a convention and had all this wonderful stuff, a big banner pull up, cards, bookmarks, I mean, the whole 9 yards. And I'm like, wow, they really go out, for you guys. He goes, no, this is all me. I bought all this. He had to go out and purchase all of that to promote his book. None of it came from the publisher. So that was kind of a light bulb moment for me when I thought, well, now wait a minute. Why am I giving away all this money and I'm still doing all this work? It helped that I had written a book called From the Fields and released it in 2015. It was a book that was never going to be able to be traditionally published because it's a targeted market. It deals with the history of high school football in Turlock, California. Okay, that book's not going to sell everywhere else unless it's somebody who's from Turlock. So I published it myself. I did the independent publishing, and the book sold well. I mean, it didn't sell thousands of copies. I wasn't expecting it to. But it sold very well. It's still selling copies today, and we're talking three and a half years since I released it. And I'm getting sizable chunks of money that would have gone to the publisher instead of me had I traditionally published it. So that was kind of okay. I know the process now. I can get a book out on Amazon. Now the thing is, can I get a novel and do this independent route and make it be successful? The book is called Escaping Infinity. It got nominated to be best sci-fi for the 2017 Dragon Awards. It's won awards for the cover. It's won awards for reader's favorite. They got one for honorable mention for fiction, science fiction. There's some other awards. I'm not going to do the whole list. The thing is, the book was very successful, and it was independently published. The thing is, you have to get an editor, like I said before. You do need to either be able to create your own cover, which is not that hard to do. Amazon actually has some templates that you can use, or you can go out and find somebody who do it for you. Now, you're sitting there thinking, oh my God, that's all that money. The cover for Escaping Infinity, which won an award for just the cover, cost me $40. It was an artist in Germany. He had a selection online. I purchased the book. That cover is mine and mine only. It's not going to show up on anybody else's book. And he did he put in the title and the author's name for me. But that's something I could have done. But he did it, and it turned out fantastic. So it can be done, and you don't have to put in a small fortune. For me, the challenge of getting that done was appealing to me, but at the same time, I don't want to completely bail out on the traditional route, which is where the hybrid comes in, and that's what I am now. I will, for the most part, publish my own. I'll do the independent. I have Tuscany Bay books set up to do this for my books. I like the control I have. I like the final say, and I like the fact that I'm out doing all that work. I'm getting all the money. I'm not giving away a big chunk of money to people who aren't really putting that much time and effort. And it's not a knock. They can't put that much time and effort into every book in their catalog. They just can't. It's impossible. You need somebody who's in there focused on yours, and that's you. And why are you giving away money? Why not publish it yourself and take that money and put it in your bank account, which is where it belongs? Now, the hybrids, we do the independent. We do our own stuff, but we also stay connected with small publishers and not so small publishers. I can think of Larry Correa, who still works with Bain, which is a major sci-fi publisher. He still publishes stuff with them. I've got 3 publishers that I still work with. Silver Empire, which put out Secret Stairs, and if you are looking for an anthology that will scare the crap out of you, please get Secret Stairs. I'll talk to you a little bit about that one down the line because my appearance in Secret Stairs was very nearly the end of me. Some of these gray hairs came from working on that book only because they put my story as the number one story in the collection, which meant anybody coming along was going to pop up the preview. It was my story they were going to read, and my story was going to decide for them whether or not they wanted to buy the rest of the book. That's a lot of pressure. And for 3.5 weeks, I'm sitting here thinking there's 33 other authors who are counting on my story hooking these readers so that they'll buy the book, and all these other great authors are going to get money out of this too. Yeah, when the thing was the number one bestseller. So after 3.5 weeks, the weight was off, the monkey was off the back, but oh boy. I also work with Belanger Books. They publish Sherlock Holmes anthologies. They're also doing an H.G. Wells anthology I'm hoping to be a part of. In addition to those two, there's Superversive Press, which is doing some anthologies, but I've also talked to them about doing a standalone novel for them. And the reason why, they asked, well, you've got your own company, what are you doing? I want to still stay in contact with traditional publishing. I don't want to completely bail on it. So I'm comfortable with, in certain circumstances, mostly anthologies, but also standalones. I would like to see what my book can do in this situation with this publisher. I think it matches up well with them, and I think they can do a very good job of promoting it, and we'll see. My philosophy has always been never be afraid to try it, and I would suggest to you writers out there, if you feel more comfortable with traditional publishing, do that, but explore the independent. And explore being a hybrid too. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nobody that says you can't do both. And I think you're going to find it to be a little bit more rewarding. And I think you might actually enjoy the whole process from an independent standpoint, because you get to make that final decision. You don't have somebody giving you an email, which is what I got on one of my books. We were having a contentious disagreement over how a certain scene was going to play out. And it basically came down to, if you want us to publish your book, you will rewrite this. That was before I knew I could go independent. And boy, do I wish I knew that back then, because I would never have rewritten it otherwise. But, when you're first trying out to be successful and to get noticed, you got to get that first book out. Sometimes you got to bite the bullet and make the change. I think that pretty much, there's not much more I can tell you about it other than I wish I had the knowledge and maybe a little bit the courage back in 2015 to launch that book as an independent and see what would have happened. But at the same time, there's been some things that have happened because I traditionally published it that probably wouldn't have happened. And I can't really complain that much. So, like I said, you find the one that works for you, go with that one. And for me, it's hybrid. For you, it could be traditional, or it could be just solo independent. Who knows? All right, what do you say we quit yammering on here, because our readers would like to find out a little bit more about something good to read. And there is a trilogy called the Sentience Trilogy by Gibson Michaels. It's been out for a while. The final book of the series was nominated as a Best Military Sci-Fi for the 2016 Dragon Awards. Unfortunately, David Weber was nominated, and if you know military sci-fi, yeah. It was kind of like me in 2017. I was really thrilled to be a finalist for Best Sci-Fi, and then I looked at the list and saw James S.A. Corey, I believe, The Expanse people. Yeah, okay. I'm a finalist. That's good enough. What do you say we take a quick break, catch a couple of messages, give it about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, and when we come back, we will meet Gibson Michaels, who is a good friend of mine and a very good author, and then we'll, after he tells us about his Sentience Trilogy, I'm going to tell you about his 4th book, and I think you're going to enjoy it. We'll be right back. This episode of A Scribe's Journey is brought to you in part by Tuscany Bay Books at Black Dog Publishing. If you're an author and you've just typed the end on your manuscript, you likely think your work is all done. Now you can just sit back and watch those royalty checks fly on in. Well, not so fast. You still need to have your book edited and formatted. You need to create a book cover for it. And after you manage to get it uploaded to Amazon, then the hard part starts. You've got to market that book so the readers even know your book is out there. Now, before you throw your manuscript in the trash, hang on. Tuscany Bay Books is here to do all that heavy lifting for you. They'll get your book out in front of readers so you can get paid and get back to writing your next book, and that's the most important thing for you. So for more information on this program, call Tuscany Bay Books at 805-795-3165. Give them an email at jchristina@TuscanyBayBooks.com, or check out the website at blackdogpublishing.co, and they will get you on your way to publishing success. Be sure and visit our website at ascribesjourney.com for news and updates on current and future guests, as well as bonus content from the show. If you have a question for me or for one of our future guests, or if you're a writer and would like to be a guest on our show, please drop us a line at ascribesjourney@gmail.com. Okay, and we're back, and it's time for us to check out this video with my late friend Gibson Michaels. This video is being allowed to be shown by us, courtesy of the young man who shot it a couple of years back. I believe it was Mid-America Con, which was also known as Worldcon that year. That's a long story. Jason Zaccarola, I want to thank Jason a ton, because this is really the only video I'm aware of where Mike is talking about his books, and I really want the readers out there to hear from him what was going on. And here's the books. Now here's the first one. It's Storm Clouds Gathering, and you'll notice these are the regulation size. I say regulation size, so they're the ones that you and I, for the older ones, older readers, when we went to the bookstore and we got the paperback books, they were this size. Let me show you an example of the difference. We'll pull Escaping Infinity up, and yeah, there you go. Yeah, a little bit of a difference there, huh? But Mike thought it was important that it had that feel where you could hold it in your hand, and it was, you know, that size that he grew up reading and that I grew up reading. And I can't fault him for that. I understand the business model that was in play for the 6x9 inch books. They're the ones I use. You know, I'm fine with the 6x9. But that's one of the things about being independent. You get to make these kind of calls and nobody can say otherwise. This was the first book. Turn around. Storm Clouds Gathering. The second book was Defying the Prophet. And the third book is Wrath of an Angry God. This is the one that was a finalist in 2016 for the Dragon Awards, Best Military Sci-Fi. Now, let's go to the video. This is Gibson Michaels, and he's going to tell you all about those books. We'll be right back.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that with David Weber in the same category, I don't hold a lot of delusions about actually winning it, but miracles do happen.
That's great. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your series? What did you actually, do you have a name for this particular trilogy, the Sentience
This trilogy is called the Sentience Trilogy because one of the main characters is a smart aleck sentient computer, biological computer, who's kind of in the background orchestrating a couple of interstellar wars. There's a interstellar civil war, alien invasion, and just a lot of interstellar explosions and shoot 'em ups going on. Kind of a Star Wars-y type thing.
Excellent, excellent. That sounds like something that some of my smidgen of viewers would be interested in, definitely. Now, what kind of future did you decide to design for this trilogy?
Basically, it's based on kind of a 33rd century expansion out into the galaxy where mankind has pretty much lost contact with old Earth. The political situation is very much like that found just prior to World War I.
Ooh, okay.
You know, so you know, it's like
lots of treaties that are kind of crossing over.
Exactly, and you know, so the the German colonies or the German planets that making up the German national entity still have an emperor. As a matter of fact, that one of the main characters in the book is a remote relative of the German emperor. So,
just like in like European society before World War I, how many of the people who were in positions of power, officials, had some type of like royal lineage to various lines.
Yeah, that a lot of them are more like the British monarchy here. They're more of constitutional monarchies rather than absolute.
Now, obviously, before in the pre-World War I era, there was a lot of heavy politicking going on, a lot of positioning, a lot of building up for potential threats and stuff like that. Do you deal a lot with the politics and the states of nations, or are you focused more on the tactics and the battles themselves?
That there is some background given for various wars and conflicts that happening between some of the primary political entities, but it's primarily involved in around the intrigue and political situation leading up to and into the interstellar civil war.
Okay.
With a bunch of aliens planning to invade in the background while they're prepping to launch their invasion.
All right. Now, of course, in space you have the additional challenge of a three-dimensional battlefield, things like inertialess movement, the question of how FTL will bring into various conflicts, deployment of fleets. How did you get over those kind of challenges, or how representative do you say you got in those books?
Well, that one of the things that a lot of the inertial problems is overcome with the fact that mankind has discovered gravitics and able to create artificial gravity and overcome centrifugal force by compensation with the internal gravitic drives.
Excellent. All right. So if there were one thing you would say to the young reader who's curious about getting into sci-fi to get them to go to your trilogy instead of to something like, David Weber's Honorverse, what would you say for that?
Basically, that while David Weber's Honorverse is one of the best sellers ever in that genre, that I write to entertain people, and so that's one of the things that most of the readers that leaving feedback on Amazon is telling me is how much they actually enjoyed the characters, enjoyed the storylines. There's a lot of humor, be it low key or humor involved. Basically, that I just like to spin a good yarn, and so that the readers are actually just enjoying the read. It's not intended to be high literature, but it's just something that I want readers to, finish the series going, damn, I really enjoyed that.
All right, Mr. Michaels, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Are you looking for your next good read? Then surf on over to sci-fi-scribe.com for a complete listing of all of Richard Paulinelli's books with purchase links on Amazon. And check out his blog for news and updates on future releases, as well as exclusive content for subscribers only. That's sci-fi-scribe.com. Okay, and we're back. And I told you were going to enjoy Gibson Michaels. And I always hesitate because that was his pen name. His real name was Michael Gibson. Yes, I gave him grief for the lengths he went for his pen name. I'm like, really, Mike? Come on. But it works. So, what are you going to do? Mike was a very good friend of mine. We met back in 2003 through a website called Fantasy Asylum. Don't even go there. It's fantasy football. But think Facebook for fantasy football fanatics, and you got it. Knew him for all that time, for 14 years. We had never met in person. We had never spoken over the phone. But, he was a great friend. And when we both kind of at the same time decided we were going to start writing books, we did it independently of each other. I don't think either one of us knew we were doing it until we kind of started talking about it. And so he sent me, he sent me the first book in the trilogy, and I read it while he was reading Reservations. And so we had comments back and forth. We were supposed to meet up in March of 2017 for the first time. I was supposed to head out to Texas for some stuff. I got sick, and it was a very good thing that I did not go ahead and get in the car and go, because I was actually thinking about going ahead and driving, figure I'll get better. Had I done that, I probably would have made it to Phoenix and been in the hospital. So that got postponed. He was supposed to come out to Santa Barbara on September 14th of 2017, and exactly a week before September 7th, I got the call from his wife, Brenda, that he had was in his office and had suffered a massive heart attack and had not survived. Needless to say, it was a shock, his passing, and it still affects me today because he was a very good friend. And at the time, he was working on a book called Eerie, and he had sent me the first half of it, and I read it, and it was a complete departure because his trilogy was military sci-fi space opera, and here he's coming with the kind of a science fiction fantasy mix. But it was such a fascinating story that I was like, I want to know how this ends. So he was continuing to work on it. And then, of course, he had passed away. He was close to being done, but not finished. Now, he had a writer's group that he had formed out there, and I had reached out to his widow, Brenda, and I had asked, is anybody out there thinking about trying to finish this up? If he was as close as I was hearing, because he'd always went to the critique group, and they were giving him suggestions, so they knew that story almost as well as he did, surely. The reply I got was that they had been thinking of waiting for about a week or two, and then they were going to reach out to me to see if I would finish it for him. And, I still get a little choked up now thinking about that, because, it took me about half of a tenth of a second to say yes, because there was no way in the world I was going to pass up the opportunity to do this one last thing for my friend. And finishing this book was the only thing I could do. So I got all the material. Unfortunately, he didn't use outlines or notes, and I'm going to plead with writers out there, please don't do that. In case somebody has to come along and do something, give us a map. But fortunately, he had talked to his son Jeremy and his wife Brenda about where he was going, and he was far enough along that when I got it, I could see where he was going generally. I just didn't know some specifics, and we were able to, through talking with his family, to kind of figure out enough of it, I think, that the way I ended it, and I'm not going to tell you how many chapters I wrote. I think we did the story justice. I think we nailed it. I'm not going to say I did it word for word, because there's no way in the world I could have written word for word what he was going to. But I think we've got the story the way he had it in mind. There was one thing he did to me that if I ever see him again in the next life, we're going to have a word, because that little devil almost tripped me up. He used a real Roman general. And I just, as at the last second, decided I better check and make sure if he's not using something that actually happened. He was. And so I was able to make a course correction in what I was going to do to end it. I think it worked out. I think it worked out well, even putting in what I had to change with the changes. I think it works out really well. I think you're going to enjoy the book. I'm not going to do too many spoilers. It is called Eerie. It is splits time between, I'd say, the 1st century Ireland on Earth, and I think he's about 33rd century on a planet way out in deep space. And the two come together, and he does it. It's amazing how he put these two together and got it to work. You're going to enjoy the book. Hopefully it'll be out soon. We were hoping it would be out last fall, but under the circumstances, I think you can understand. There's been some delays. It's going to take a little extra time to get it done. We'll talk to Dawn Greenfield Ireland next week. We'll mention Eerie. She can tell you a little bit about it because she was the editor. She can tell you her process through doing that. Mine was just to try to finish it. There was one little thing he did. He always started a chapter with a quote. I think you will enjoy the last chapter's quote. It seemed a fitting way to wrap the book up. When it comes out, trust me, I will be telling everybody, shouting from the rooftops, this book is out, because I think you're going to enjoy it. It's unfortunate that he's only going to do 4 books, but if there's going to be a final book from him, I think this one would be the one that he would have picked too. It's a great book. Okay, I think we better wrap this thing up because I'm losing my voice. If you have any comments or questions about the show, or if you want me to read a question to a upcoming guest, like I said, next week we've got an editor who also writes, so she's going to talk about editing and writing. Dawn Greenfield Ireland, she is my editor. And if you're a writer looking for an editor, give her a listen, get her contact info, and reach out to her because she's a great editor. I use her on When the Gods Fell and the Timeless series so far. She's going to be doing the rest of my books as long as, not too many of you jump in there and steal all the slots. So you start doing that, I'll tell you, quit poaching my editor. But for now, I think we'll wrap this thing up. I want to thank you for watching. Readers, keep reading. Writers, keep writing, and keep walking the path of a scribe's journey. We'll see you next week.
This has been a Scribe's Journey with your host, Richard Palinelli, a Tuscany Bay Productions presentation.